This week we are continuing in John. We're looking at John 3:12 through 22. This passage is interesting, and you'll notice something as we continue this study. The book of John is the latest gospel, or the last written gospel that we have, and it seems to be coming from a place where there's a group of Christians, new Christians, and they're being persecuted. John doesn't have the issue, and we don't see the pieces of John where Jesus isn't the Messiah. He comes out, and as we looked at last week, very immediately recognizes who he is and what his ministry is calling him to. This passage we see is a private conversation with Nicodemus. Nicodemus was a Pharisee, and he comes to Jesus in the middle of the night, and that's always an interesting time. We think about the middle of the night as something that is a little secret, a little bit different, and a little bit subversive. Nicodemus has this conversation, and normally we see Jesus in a debate with Pharisees. This is different. Nicodemus has questions. As a follower of the law, that was what the Pharisees' job was, is they interpreted the law for the Jewish people. There was many laws, and so this became confusing. And they would come to them and say, I have this situation. What does the law say I should do? Jesus has a conversation, like I said. It's not a public debate where he's going head to head with somebody on a hard-lined issue. And yet, there are some really good discussions that come out of this conversation. For Jesus, he says something to Nicodemus that is something akin to, you have to do better. It no longer is just the law that you must follow, which seems at this point very much in the same kind of framework and thought as the Apostle Paul. The reason that might be is because this is coming after Paul has already written. He's already taught about how Christians are going to be different from Jews because we have to follow Christ and not just the law. This is hard to hear for Nicodemus. He is an adamant follower of the law, and everything that he's been doing is no longer in bounds for Jesus. It's no longer enough. And he says to him, this is the point. God loved the world so much that he gave his only son. We were talking about this in our teachers' meeting, in our devotional, and how weird this sounds. It's often okay for us to think of sacrificing ourselves, and yet to sacrifice our children seems just beyond anything that we're capable of. You'll see parents holding their kids back against their bodies if a car comes anywhere near them. And yet this father sends his son to be the sacrifice for us all. Of course, Nicodemus doesn't see it and understand it in that way, but we read this verse and we put it on billboards and think, wow, this is amazing. But really, what does that mean for us? God so loved us that the one thing that was so special and so above was sacrificed for us. How does that make you feel to know that you are such a precious gift, that it was at all costs God was willing to pay to get you? As you think this week and we get closer to Easter, keep in your heart and your mind how important and special you are, and let God know your appreciation for that love. I'll see you on Sunday.